arrangement that is separate from NATO. They're not talking about the dissolution of NATO, but they're talking about a need to have an alternative other than NATO to deal with European security issues. And if Europe actually goes down that path, that's the end of NATO. So I think the United States is going to be dealing with the collapse of NATO. The question is, how does Russia handle this, especially the provocations that are undoubtedly going to come from New Europe? The places I see three potential flashpoints. One, Europe, the Poland and Western Ukraine. We still don't know how that's going to play out. That's a very, very important issue that Russia's going to have to manage carefully as they look for a political termination of this conflict. The denazification aspect of it must incorporate what's called Western Ukraine, the Galician parts that identity separate from the Russian part and even from Kiev. We don't know how that's going to end yet. So that's worrisome. The Baltic states are literally punk kids on a suicide trip. I mean, they are doing everything they can to provoke the Russian bear because they feel that they are immortal behind their, Article 5 protections. But I think they're going to find out that if they're talking about shutting down the Gulf of Finland to Russia, good luck. They're talking about closing down rail traffic. The Estonians are, basically outlawing being an ethnic Russian. They're doing everything they can to get Russia to take them out. And what they don't understand is if it's one thing to sit there and try to be a responsible member of the international community and have Russia attack you in an unprovoked fashion. It's another thing to sit there and kick the bear, 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 kick the bear eats you. And when the bear decides to eat you, it's going to be very fast, so fast that NATO won't be able to respond. And they're betting that NATO is willing to commit suicide because they're behaving irresponsibly. And I remind everybody that Article 5 of the NATO Charter is not an automatic. There is no guarantee that people come to your assistance. Article 5 requires people to consider coming to your assistance. But if you're behaving in a grossly irresponsible fashion, if you're kicking the bear and kicking the bear and kicking the bear until the bear eats you, I think there's a better than even chance that most of Europe's going to say, gosh, you brought that on yourself. Poland, of course, will kick and scream, but I think Poland's going to become increasingly isolated. I mean, they're making no friends right now, the Poles, especially with the Germans. And even the United States and others, we're a little fed up with the behavior of the Polish government. And so, Poland may find itself isolated. I don't think there's any worry about Russia invading Poland. The concern is that Poland's going to do something stupid in West Ukraine and then get the bloodiest nose possible. It will be ugly for Poland. And again, NATO will not come to their assistance. And then the other area is, of course, Moldova. I just see Moldova behaving extraordinarily irresponsible right now. And I'm afraid that some people in NATO, including the Poles and Romanians, may encourage Moldova to work with the Ukrainians to create a crisis in the Transnistria region, designed to divert Russian attention away from its objectives and force Russia to commit to the southern tier prematurely, come through Odessa, etc. And I think their hope is that by doing that, Russia will trigger a NATO reaction, NATO occupation. NATO's made it clear NATO's not going into Ukraine, but it still would be a very dangerous situation. So there's a lot going on that needs to be handled. The danger to the world is Eastern Europe, Poland, the Baltics, Romania. The United States is going to be seeking to exploit the Russophobic attitudes there in an effort to continue to contain and disrupt Russia. The real struggle is going to be with Western Europe politically, and the United States is going to try and keep them within the NATO alliance, discourage them from promoting a new European alliance. And I think Russia is going to be doing the opposite. I think you're going to see Russia doing a lot of outreach. This is why the Turkish energy hub is so important. that if Russia can work with Turkey to build up an energy hub, they will be able to replace the Nord Stream pipelines, which were destroyed. I mean, we just had Victoria Nuland brag about this, turning it into worthless junk on the bottom of the ocean. I mean, she's a criminal. She's a war criminal, and the nation that ordered that attack is a nation of war criminals. And unfortunately, that's probably the United States, maybe with the assistance of Great Britain. But
yeah,
the good news in all of this is that Russia is the only adult in the room, literally the only adult in the room. And their job right now isn't to further escalation, but to, create paths of de-escalation, escalation management, make sure it doesn't spin out of control. And since Russia is so utterly in control of the situation on the battlefield, economically, etc., Russia can go faster when they need to, slow down when they need to. They can control the pace to prevent any, spinning out of control. But it's a dangerous, dangerous situation. I mean, the first thing you learn in the military is that no plan survives initial contact with the enemy. So no matter what the Russians think they want to do, how they're going to get there is going to be completely different than the plan that they've currently have. Because once things start to happen, you can't predict outcomes. Things will go this way, things will go that way, and you're going to have to adapt and make adjustments. And so we know the general direction that Russia wants to go, but the exact mechanism, the exact path, it's an unknowable at this time.
Thank you, Scott. And when you were answering this, because this is actually how I felt instinctively, that Poland will be used, will continue to be used to behave in a certain way towards Russia. Okay, so this will be like the representative. However, when I'm observing what they are doing, what the government is doing in Poland, as much as I know, I wonder, to a certain point, I thought that this is all by the decisions and orders from Washington at first. But now I see that there is a big factor of just mental issues, okay? Literally mental issues, sick, literally mentally sick decisions. So how much of it is of their own craziness and how much of it is the decision from Washington? I don't know. I think it's a mix. But I just want to say those two things before I ask you my question about Poland. So there are two informations I came across very recently, actually, when I arrived here. The first one is about the agreement that Polish Post Services has signed with the Military Recruitment Center. This is an agreement for 5 years. And in this agreement, they are agreeing to collaborate on delivering to citizens sufficiently and quickly very important letters. Okay, we know what letters. Military recruitment letters. Here we go. So this is one thing. Second thing is that the fire department for Poland, the commander-in-chief just gave an interview. I haven't posted this video yet, I will soon, about 10 days ago, about a new application that will be presented to Polish citizens, which will be downloaded on their phones, and then they can look where they can go and find a shelter in case, right? In case of what? In case of what, right? The point is this. We have for Poland the shelters, ancient shelters, not well maintained. They were checking them. Only 3% of Polish population at this current state would be able to find a shelter. 3% of the country, okay? And now they are coming with the app. So why I'm saying all of this in the interview with you is because you connect the dots. You look at this and you're like, okay, so here we have like letters are going to fly, right? We have the applications coming. So clearly, they are trying, right? Train with the army, funny weekend, they do those things. So do you think that, I really don't feel like Poland will be able to create more of this situation with this and enter this conflict because Russia will end it before. Like it will be too late for Poland. I really hope. I really hope they will not do anything. They will not take anyone anywhere.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is, it, then these are adequate for self-defense. And so to streamline the mechanisms of mobilization is a smart thing. And if they've taken a look at Poland, they realize that the best way to do this is have a collaborative relationship with the Postal Service. Smart move. If you think you're going to go to war with Russia and be subjected to, aerial attacks, nuclear or non-nuclear, it's imperative that you have a civil defense plan in place. And so publishing an app that tells people where to go, a smart move. But here's the problem. Russia's not getting ready to go to war with Poland. It's Poland getting ready to go to war with Russia. And that's where people have to stand up because, again, I believe in strong defense. I believe in being prepared. And I also believe that if somebody's threatening to attack you, you need to be able to repel that attack, or else you'll just be a servant nation your entire life. But I also believe that that fear can be exploited by people who have bad intent. And it seems to me that there's certain elements within the Polish government that are generating fear and using these mechanisms to generate fear, promote bad policy. The fact of the matter is, Russia didn't want to go to war in Poland. We know this. We know Russia did everything humanly possible to avoid, not Poland, Ukraine. Did everything possible to avoid this. That it was the West, it was France, it was Germany, it was Poland, it was the United States that promoted this conflict and encouraged this conflict and generated this conflict. If you think that the significant level of Polish, we call them mercenary, but manpower and equipment that's been provided. Poland's provided over 200 tanks already to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 200 tanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And most of those tanks were manned by Poles, not Ukrainians. And there's Polish infantry battalions working in support of them. The Polish army is on the ground in Ukraine today. They just don't call it the Polish army. If you think that didn't happen, that this just happened on its own, you're wrong. The Poles have had a plan in place for some time to do just this. And that plan is being implemented, it's being executed. So the Poles are to blame for this conflict, singularly. They play a heavy role. And the Russians know this. Go talk to the Russian soldiers on the front line. Listen in. I'm giving you the radio that listens in on the radio traffic of the Ukrainians. Overwhelmingly, they hear Polish voices. Overwhelmingly.
Yeah, we don't hear Ukrainians' voices anymore about the radio. We only hear Polish soldiers and mercenaries, yeah. Znači, ne čuju više. Bio je jedan dobar intervju. Scott Ritter radi jedan dobar intervju sa, čini mi se, lik iz Donjecka, koji je, kako se zove, rekao da trenutno, i to je bilo pre 2 meseca, da trenutno ono što vojnici čuju preko radija čuju samo poljske i strane Nemačke, Engleske, Amerike, njihove glasove.
The majority of the voices they intercept are Polish voices. Then there's a lot of English voices, a lot of French voices, a lot of other voices, but the voice that they should be hearing that they're not hearing much of are Ukrainian voices. So what does that tell you? That Poland's been preparing for this, that Poland's been doing this. To what end? Is it to defeat Russia, or is it to create the conditions for the annexation of Western Ukraine by, and here's the sickest part, by helping Ukraine destroy itself? Because the only way Poland was going to be able to take over Western Ukraine is for Ukraine to destroy itself as a modern nation state, thereby making the annexation of Western Ukraine a political possibility. It's not going to happen. Belarus will allow it to happen. Russia's not going to allow it to happen. But in the sick mind of these Polish politicians, it's increasingly, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but sometimes you gotta say, well, how does this all make sense? And to sacrifice thousands of Polish lives, as they are in eastern Ukraine right now, for what end? Not defeating Russia. They're making Russia stronger. It's to defeat Ukraine. to encourage Ukraine to continue the fight, to continue a war that is destroying Ukraine as a modern nation state, thereby to make it more likely than not. And what's the one area of Ukraine that suffered the least amount of damage? Western Ukraine. So they're allowing all of Ukraine to be destroyed except the West, and then they're going to absorb the West into their. So who knows? Only one day the archives will be opened up and all these secrets will spill out. Maybe that day will come sooner if the Polish people rise up and overthrow this government and then get to see what happened. But who knows? But the truth will come out. Poland is a dysfunctional nation with a government that is not looking out for the best interests of Poland at all. They're alienating themselves from everybody in the world, and soon Poland will find itself to be a nation with no friends.
And very sadly, I agree with what you said, especially the last part. And I think the true test will be when, I hope it won't happen, but when those letters will start to be sent out. Because then you will see the reaction of the citizens. I mean, if they don't react now, then when are they going to flee the country? I don't know. But I have one more question, Scott, and I just want to ask you if you can answer it, but if you can be maybe, how to say? I will ask you, but it's a very, it's a question that might trigger YouTube, but I never ask you this, and I always
trigger what?
Or YouTube algorithm, because it's very sensitive.
Okay, I'll be
to
careful how
words.
I answer it then.
Okay, when you were, let's start with this. I'm very aware that each war, each conflict creates enormous opportunity for the most profitable business in the world, which is human trafficking. And I wanted to ask you this for a very long time. When you were in Iraq, you've seen a lot of things. I'm sure you have seen a lot of things. You've heard a lot of things. What is the awareness of American soldier? What is how they feel knowing what's really going on? Because this for sure was happening in Iraq as well.
Well, I'll start with this. It's hard for me to talk about the American soldier because I wasn't there during 2003 war. But I was there in the decade and from 1991 to 1998 when economic sanctions were destroying the social fabric of Iraq. And the one thing that you saw was the Iraqis. Prostitution in a Muslim society is a very touchy subject. Muslim women, it's haram, it's forbidden. They can't be prostitutes and they're treated harshly. But in Iraq, they had, there's a certain tribe, they call them gypsies, but basically the women of this tribe were allowed to be belly dancers, allowed to entertain, allowed to perform in nightclubs, even under during the time of Saddam Hussein, it was encouraged. And when the insiders of Saddam would hold a party, they would always bring these women there to entertain. They were prostitutes. They just didn't call them prostitutes, but they were prostitutes. And so that always was there. But what you saw as the economy collapsed, Kurds and Christians first, because they are outsiders in a Muslim society. You started to see that the first thing is that they start looking for foreign husbands, and so you see them gravitate to where the United Nations is, and they all want to become the girlfriend of these UN people. Maybe there's some honest people who truly fall in love and will marry a girl for legitimate reasons and start a family. That's always a possibility. You never know with humans. But what happens is the girls become so desperate and the families become so desperate to get their daughter out of the country that they turn a blind eye. Because normally you wouldn't expect a Christian family to allow their daughter to have sexual relations with a foreigner freely and openly. but the family did it because they believed that was the only way for the love to manifest itself, and that eventually the man would do the honorable thing and bring the daughter out, and then the family could follow. But I watched as UN inspectors exploited the situation over and over and over and over again, especially the people, the permanent staff. They just flitted from one girl to another. And what you have to understand is when you use a girl in that fashion, you destroy her. The family will allow this to happen if she can get married and be brought out. But if you soil a girl and then you abandon her, she is disgraced, dishonored, and so is the family. And then the community turns in on itself. She will be killed. The family will be ostracized, and it's the end of that family unit. And this happened all the time. And the girls that were used by the inspectors, the only place they could go now is to work the hotels. They became the prostitutes.
But
Scott, that was there. That was reality.
But you know what I really meant asking you? I meant of that number of missing children, women, mainly women and children, that are used.
I don't know about that. I didn't see, to be honest, what I saw in terms of children was the Iraqi mothers started to beg. And, that, of course, under Saddam, there was no begging because everybody's taken care of. But now mothers would come out in the parks and they'd have their children, and then as you drive by, the children are starving to death, literally. And so we'd stop and give them food and water. But over time, you just see that gradually the children are disappearing. And the question is, did they die?
Right.
Or did something else happen? Did something else happen? And I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer to that question. I was not personally aware of any, child trafficking that was taking place, if that's the question that you're asking. I have no evidence. I would say once a society succumbs to the sex trade, that anything's possible. But I have no evidence of any of that other stuff happening because I only had superficial knowledge of the sex trade. I only saw I can't even say mine because my teams were in for a short period of time and I kept an iron grip on them. But we could see what would happen with the long-term teams, the teams that were there for a long period of time, and what was happening. And that was heartbreaking. I don't know how many times I had a Kurdish or a Christian girl come up, and because I was well known, I was Abu Azamat, the father of all crises. I was on TV every time I came in, so I was supposedly a man of great power and influence. And every time I'd get ready to leave Iraq, easily a dozen people come up and hand letters to me. Could you get this to this guy? Could you please? He hasn't written back to me. He promised to write. I don't know what happened. Could you find out what happened to him? And they'd give me these letters, and and on the one hand, I have to be careful because is it a provocation on the part of the Iraqi government? But on the other hand, it's personal. I can't open the letters and read them. It's personal. I mean, you can't do that. Then you come back and they're there. Did you reach him? Did you do this? And they're desperate and they're crying, they're breaking down, and you're just like, holy cow. And I have to tell you, the years 1997, 1998 were extraordinarily difficult in that regard, because the presence of the United Nations grew and expanded, and so there's this horrific exploitation of the local social economic collapse, and it broke my heart. I mean, it literally broke my heart because, A, it's happening, but B, what do you do about it? I mean, what do I do? What do I do with those letters? That's the ultimate thing. I mean, I didn't want to take the letter, but they're crying. They're literally crying. They're getting physically sick. They're breaking down. So you take the letter in hopes to bring some sort of comfort to the person. But now what do? I tried on occasions to deliver the letters, but then I found out that the guy was married with kids. So now do I destroy that? And so I can't deliver that letter. And then other times I had to be careful because the letter could be a provocation. but I can't read the letter to find out if it's a provocation. And so more oftentimes than not, to be frank, the letters got thrown in a fireplace and got burned to eliminate all evidence of it. And but I've never talked about this before. That was a very very difficult part of the job. You'd like to believe that the United Nations is this wonderful thing, but we know it's not. We know what they've done in Haiti. We know what they've done in Africa. We know what they've done elsewhere. And unfortunately, in Iraq, we had a similar level of exploitation. But your fundamental question about child trafficking, no, I have no evidence that happened.
Thank you for
I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just saying I have no evidence.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it wasn't my job to investigate.
No, thank you. No, I think we all know really the answer. I was just wondering. But this is true human tragedy. This is what war does to people on so many levels. I cannot. I mean, you've been in those situations, and you understand this. I cannot imagine the psyche of people after this. How you heal, how you center yourself back again. And
I will say one thing. It's not about Iraq. It's about Europe. It's about what happened in Bosnia and what happened in Kosovo. If you go to Germany, outside of every major American base, there's a hotel-like facility that's fully staffed with girls who are registered with the local authorities. They have medical certificates and all this kind of stuff. They're prostitutes. And the American servicemen are frequent guests to these establishments. And it's accepted by the military and local society as a way of reducing sexual tension so you don't have rapes and all this kind of stuff. It's reality. Then the troops go to Bosnia, they go into Kosovo. Bosnia is a totally different place. I mean, the stories I've heard about the trafficking and the active participation of American military personnel in the trafficking are sickening. But the other thing was what happened in Hungary, because Budapest became one of the destinations for liberty, for R&R, rest and recreation, and so these American troops would go on liberty in Budapest. And the menu of sexual opportunity that was provided to them would literally make you sick, and yet they're actively participating in this stuff. And I'm not going to talk about it here, but you can use take your worst imagination of the worst thing you could possibly think, and it's probably worse than what you could possibly think. And yet these guys who are hyped up and over-sexualized, and then they go to the sickest possible adult fantasy land where anything is possible. And so it happened in Europe. I don't know if it's still happening in Europe. I'd like to believe that the Hungarians have cleaned that up, that their economic situation. But, all throughout the 1990s, the former Warsaw Pact countries were horrible. I don't know if I talked about did I talk about the Middle East? In Bahrain, when the inspecting teams first came in, you're in the hotels, and they have the bars, and then they have an area where a live band plays, and they were exclusively Filipinos. And first of all, they're the greatest musicians, greatest mimics in the world. They could play any song, and they could play it just like it was on the record, or a live performance. It's perfect. But the rumor was that the girls also had a side job as escort. But it was if it happened and it was just a rumor, they did it discreetly. Nobody knew. It wasn't in your face. Nothing. It was it was there. And the reason why I suspect it's true is that Bahrain's where the Saudi Arabians would come in, and they have the Bridge of Shame. You go across the causeway, and on the other side, there's a lot of mosques that are built by the Saudi princes who believe that if you build a mosque, you atone for the sins that took place in Bahrain. But the Saudis would come in, and they had arrangements. So I think the girls were there to service the Saudis. But it was also a place that had a lot of Westerners coming in, not just the inspectors, but we had a Fifth Fleet was in Muharraq. We had air bases. The British were there, especially after the Gulf War. And so what you saw around 1990, again, 1996, 1997, is the Filipino bands were being replaced by Ukrainian bands or Russian bands. So you had these bands come in. And unlike the Filipinos, these bands were horrible. Horrible. They played the kitschiest music. They couldn't mimic anything, thick accents, and the girls dressed like absolute bad words. And they were there for one reason and one. They weren't there to sing. They were there to sexually serve anybody and everybody. And it just, it spiraled out of control. And it was heartbreaking because I had been in the Soviet Union, and I know what a Soviet woman is. A proud woman. A woman that is respectful of, her status and her honor and, things of that nature. And these girls were the exact opposite, but they were a product of that. But I guess because of the horrific economic reality in their homeland, they had no choice but to do this. And so they were brought out and they'd be flown in and it literally broke your heart because, you couldn't even try to talk to them because the second you talked to them, you realized that they didn't want to be there. They had these eyes. They were dead eyes, literally dead eyes. Normally, if you talk to somebody, there's life in somebody's eyes, and you can talk to them, and you see hope, and these were just dead eyes, people that were literally living death, just going through the motions because they had no other opportunity. And that was heartbreaking, too. That was very, very heartbreaking. I hope that because the situation has improved in Russia, that you won't see that. But what people don't understand about the war in Ukraine is that you're condemned homeless children. Go to Seattle and take a look at what happens to homeless children. So, I don't know if I answered your question. I think I might have opened up a bigger bag of worms, but it's...
No, but I think it's so important you're talking about it because, when you talk about the military moves and the political events, we tend to not really give that much attention to what are the consequences of all those actions, right? Because at the end, then you have the humans suffering, and this is like for generations.
Yeah.
It's for like those letters. This stays with the family, and it goes on. It's like it needs healing, really.
Let me ask you this. I'll make the following prediction. Poland is creating permanent American military installations. I will predict in the next year or two that you will see facilities outside that are staffed by Ukrainian girls.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say. And that's the future of Ukraine. That's the future of Ukrainian women because their country's destroyed. Poland doesn't want them. Poland's not going to integrate them as normal. And so Poland's going to use them as a buffer against the Americans, poisoning the Polish well, so to speak. And so they're going to put these girls out there. And then once you do that, because they have there's nobody out there defending them.
No home to go back to, Scott, right? There's no home to go back to.
Future. And believe me, the American men aren't going to marry them. They're not going to marry them.
So let's think about those things because this is the final result of all those wars and conflicts. Yeah. What happens to humans? Yeah, what happens to societies?
Men can go be criminals and still have pride. And even though they're doing crime, they can still be a man among other men. But women know. Women know when somebody has crossed a line, and you can tell in their eyes. As I said, the deadness of the eyes is a dead giveaway. It means that they've gone down a path for which there's literally no return. You don't see very many men that have dead eyes. Men will always try to find a way to get out of it. But I saw a lot of dead eyes in the Middle East. Heartbreaking.
Scott, thank you so much, first of all, for answering this last question, because I know it's not easy topic, but I think it's very important to actually talk about it. And for your time today. So yes, let's see how this will end and how soon this will end. I still have a feeling that Poland is not going to go any deeper into this. Simply, it won't last that long for it to participate more. That's how I feel, I hope. But if anyone would like to follow Scott, you will find links down below this video. So Scott has YouTube channel with interviewing his guests. All the books you can also find down below the video, and the direct link should be working again. Last time you were telling me, guys, that it should be working to the publisher and to the Amazon directly. So you can order also in the ebook and Telegram, because I'm not mentioning Twitter anymore. Again.
Oh, I'm on Twitter.
Again, okay.
I'm back on Twitter, so there it is. Let's finish with a positive note, okay? Because we just went down a rabbit hole, and we need to come out of that rabbit hole. And I'm back on Twitter, able to communicate, and I'll leave this with you too. As bad as things are, I think what we're doing here is trying to promote communication, building bridges, of cross-cultural communication, and let's just keep doing that. Hopefully, by encouraging this kind of communication, we can engender enough hope among enough people that we can make real and lasting change for the better. So there, positive note to end this on. We don't need to be negative.
Thank you so much. I agree 100%. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you, Anya K. Thank you, Scott Ritter. Great interview. Fucking great interview, man. Okay, so and she's amazing, he's amazing, he's fucking telling the truth. That's what people need to hear. I mean, I know we streaming to like 5 different fucking YouTube, Facebook, Dobro, Twitch. You can even stream on Twitter, man. I didn't know that, but yeah. So what we need, all of us, is just the truth. That's it. So we can make rational decisions. When we hear something and then later that thing is not true, you cannot make rational or good decisions. So we all know they're lying to us. The mainstream media especially, that's just horrible and disgusting. I don't even watch anymore. The only way you can find the truth now these days is actually on YouTube, podcast, and independent journalist. That's it. So Scott Ritter is one of the beacons of truth at the moment, along with Anya K, along with Duran, along with George Galloway, the Gray Zone, and all the others. So that's it. This is all I wanted to stream. Actually, we just start to streaming, so we're just testing thing yet. That's why I'm streaming to multiple platforms. Just testing to see where we're gonna be. And my camera's not actually, because I'm streaming from 2 different platforms. Never mind. Fuck it. I'm just fucking depressed. When I hear this shit, I'm fucking depressed, man. So how are we gonna get out of this? The main question is, do we want to go with Russia, with war with Russia, or not? That's the question. And I'm asking my friends in Europe. I'm from Europe. And I'm asking, do you want to go? Oh, we want to support. Oh, okay, but do you want to go with Russia? They always says no. So stop fucking supporting Ukraine then. What we learned is that it's not like that black and white anymore. It's just like Russia attacked unprovoked and all that shit. That's just not true. That's just not true anymore. You can pull people on this maybe before, but not now. I think the people are actually more and more educate themselves. They see they can't. They see they cannot find the truth on the mainstream media, and the people searching somewhere else, just like me. I was the one who was caught up in all this shit. Oh, Russia unprovoked aggression and all that shit. But when you go in and see what's happening in 2014 and Maidan and Donbass people and all that shit, I mean, Russia has a right to protect its own people. Period. That's it. You want to fight them? Well, you're gonna fight Russia. That's it. That's just logical. Every country. I mean, look at Serbia, man. Serbia would go to war to protect their people in Kosovo. Fuck that. It's our people. Of course we're gonna go. So stop harassing Serbian people over there, and it's not gonna be war. We're all gonna live in peace. It's just so stop provoking people in Russian-speaking population over there. I don't know. It's just too complicated. I know where my mind is. Oh, this is also Scott. Oh, this is gonna be tomorrow. We're gonna get this another interview. It was like 2 hours ago. We're just gonna watch that tomorrow. So enough with the politics, the geopolitics. We are going to play some games. Because World War III is already started. It's just statement of fact. We are in World War III with Russia. I mean, not we. Serbia is with Russia. I mean, multiple people in Serbia, 80% of them are with Russia. I mean, not because, I don't know, we just love Russia so much and Russian people. Yeah, we do. We have some cultural and long ties from World War One, even from the Ottoman Empire when Russia helped Serbia. It's not just that. I mean, I would never put myself on a Russian supporter just because Russia is a friend. No, no, never. I would never do that. For me, it's only truth and justice. And at the moment, the truth is on the Russian side, and that's it. That's why. That's this in my case. I don't know the others in Serbia, but my case is if the truth is not on the Russian side, I would never support them. Not in a million years. I only go where the truth and justice. That's it. We all know about NATO. We all know about Nazis. We all know about shit. You cannot go and hide all that stuff. It's just there. It's a fact. I mean, and everyone has the right to defend themselves. Or even Ukrainians has the right to defend themselves, and they're doing that. So when Russia starts doing something that I don't approve, I will just say it. Hey, it's not the truth is not more on your side. That's it. But from now on, what NATO is doing, and I'm not gonna go in what NATO did to Serbia because NATO did some horrible things to Serbia. We lost 14% of our territory. It doesn't matter what happened. Serbia was fighting. All right, if you wanna take the case of Ukraine and Serbia, it's actually the same, almost the same. In a case like Serbia was fighting the separatists for 6 months, actually a year. There was no army involved, only police. Police was fighting in Kosovo against the separatists, and we every day we have 2, 5, 10 police officers died. So eventually, when the police couldn't handle anymore, the army came in. It's logical. And I'm not gonna say that the Serbian army did everything right. No, of course not. There was some big mistakes. But eventually, they're doing what the Ukrainians are doing, fighting separatists in their own country. They didn't attack no one. Serbia didn't attack any NATO country. Serbia didn't. So even if our leader at that time was doing something wrong, is that the case? So we have to lose like 14% of our territory. Oh, your leader did bad decisions. Oh, really? So because of that, we have to lose 14% of our territory? Well, no. Well, fuck it. What is it? So Serbia is still fighting today. Actually, Serbia is, I think, a few days ago, 5 most powerful nations in the world, like Italy, Germany, United States, came to Serbia to actually threaten Serbia again. They didn't want that injustice in 1999 is just not enough for them. They're going to threaten Serbia again. Oh, yeah, let's threaten Serbia again. We did injustice to Serbia in 1999, so now we have to hide our own mistakes and threaten Serbia again. So fuck that. Serbian people are going to tell them, suck this middle finger, because we will never be with you, with NATO or the AU, you fucking Nazi lovers. That's it. I'm fucking too disappointed to even speak this shit anymore. I should be probably speaking to Serbian, but fuck it. Yeah, let's listen to Gonzalo later, what you have to say about these F-16s. I'm just too fucking, what's the word? Depressed with all this shit that's happening. And I always tell people to think about this. If the United States is not in Europe, don't have that influence on European countries, they're like fucking puppies. They're doing like that's why they're attacking Serbia so much, because the Serbia says, fuck you. Fuck, no one's gonna tell us what to think. No one's gonna tell us what we can do or not. Oh, fuck you. If you Italians, French people, German people want to buy in all this crap, do it. That's your prerogative. But don't expect us to do the same thing. I mean, there's just people like puppies. Little puppies. Whatever United States says we have to do. No. That's why I support Russia, because that world, I don't want to live in that world I want to live in a multipolar world where no one has the dominance of petrodollar or anything else, or your armies or shit like that. So what I want to say is, I always ask people why, if United States is not in Europe and they don't have that influence, I think that Europeans, Russians, and Ukrainians will live in peace. I have no doubt in my mind that will happen if the United States is not meddling in. We will all live in peace. I guarantee you. Fuck that. Let's listen to this guy. He's smarter than me.
Hey, how's it going? I'm recording this because I got a light. See? I don't know if you can see it in the reflection of my glasses. Yeah, you ought to be able to see it. And F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. That's just...
Gonzalo later, he's in Kharkiv.
These F-16 fighter jets, right? They're not going to make a lick of difference.
And he's a big supporter
on the battlefield. They most certainly will not. Hang on, sorry about that.
What's happening?
They're not going to make any difference because, first of all, these planes are coming up on. They're over 50 years old. Okay, on the one hand, not the individual planes themselves, but the design. I mean, they've been surpassed by other designs that are better and all the rest of it. And of course, Russia's air defense systems aren't going to have much trouble with them. The point of these F-16s is that they're bait to hook the Russians. Let me explain.
One more thing. I just don't think that these tanks are going to be... it's so fucking obvious. Like when you look at we're sending the tanks now, and we're gonna send the long range missiles and everything. The planes, the airplanes, is fourth generation airplanes like F-16, F-15s, and all the other. They're gonna be sent to Ukraine. Definitely, I don't have any doubt in my mind about this, because it's logical. You cannot send these tanks without air support. So they're building this. We're going to give them tanks. We're going to give them long range missiles. And then we have to give them planes. Why? Because the tanks cannot survive without air support. The one problem they're going to have is Russian defense system is one of the greatest in the world. Integrated. I'm not meaning on the battlefield. I mean, when you say integrated defense, that means few different defense systems working together, like S-300, S-400, with Panzer, with Tor, with all the others. So when you fly in, like 5 different systems are seeing you.
See, first of all, you have to understand that the people who are going to be flying these planes, number one, they're going to be flying them out of Poland or Romania, okay, where NATO has some bases there.
Yeah, that's true.
And the distance from those bases to the front lines in eastern Ukraine is over 1,000 kilometers. That's about 700 miles over that distance, okay? And so these planes are going to have to traverse an enormous distance. Even if they're going to fire standoff missiles that might have a couple hundred miles range, they're still going to have to cross roughly half of Ukraine to get within range, okay? And so, of course, the Russians are going to use their air defense systems, which everybody admits are just, second to none. And they're going to knock down a few of these planes, for sure. But I think that what NATO actually wants is for the Russians to hit the NATO bases in Romania and Poland. See? You have to understand that when the war started...
That's one of the questions. Does NATO really want a war with Russia? I mean, not just this proxy shit, but really, really want a war. Or they're just so deep in this and they don't know how to get out of this. So they're thinking, oh, we gotta win this son of a bitch. The Ukrainians gotta win this so we can get out of this. Do they really think they can win against Russia? I'm not saying NATO is weak or anything like that. They don't have the weapon. They do. But what Russia has is those supersonic missiles that no one has, or you cannot stop this thing. So when I watch Germans and all the other in Europe, they're thinking, oh, United States is going to protect us. When the shit hit the fan, the United States will go home and they will not give a fuck about Europe. They did every time they fought a war and lost, by the way. The only war they won is the Panama War, I think. And that was fought about some fruit shit, ananas. The only thing they won is Panama War. And people say, well, no, that's not true. What about the Second World War? Fuck that. The Second World War won Russia against Germany. United States won against Japan. But if we talk about Germany, the majority of casualties and the heavy weight, 90% of the weightlifting is Russia. 27 million people died. 27 million. So these guys did the heavy lifting. United States did in Pacific. That's true. Okay, 2 wars. They won against Japan and they won against Panama. Every other war they were involved, they lost. And they ran away. So when the shit hit the fan, Europe will be all alone. I guarantee you. You know what Russia is gonna do? You know how Russian people are? They're gonna give them the hand. It says, okay, never mind. That's how the Russian people are. They're gonna give them a hand. They're gonna say, okay, let's try and live together. Let's be in peace. We don't even want this war. We didn't even want this war. NATO expansion and all that crap. I didn't want to go into that because it's true. People are gonna say, "Oh, it doesn't matter what NATO did." No, it matters what NATO did. It fucking matters.
In February, wow, it's coming up on a year. It's as I am saying this, it's going to be exactly 11 months since the start of this conflict. Time flies when you're living in misery, now doesn't it? Anyway, since at the beginning of this conflict, the Russians hit the NATO training grounds at Yavoriv, just outside of Lviv, and they hit it with a couple of hypersonic missiles and a bunch of other missiles, and they killed.
That was at the beginning of the war, I think, when they hit that. Russian hit those with the hypersonic missiles, the mercenary base. They destroyed like 400 people over there and some like $350 million worth of equipment. Is he talking about that? I think he's talking
roughly
about that.
In excess of 400 volunteers.
Oh yeah, he's talking about that.
Okay, it was clear that these volunteers, and
I think that was like 7th or 8th of March, 2022, when did it happen? You know, all these mercenaries came in and did TikTok videos. Look, we came. Look, we're here at the base. Look at all the equipment we have, and they go to sleep, and all of a sudden.
Other attached NATO personnel were kind of like.
If I was there, the commander of that base, I would said, take everyone who's getting the gate, take all the cell phones. Holy shit! What stupid idiots!
Staging what might be incoming NATO troops or gear and equipment. The Russians also destroyed something like $400 million worth of NATO weaponry at Yavoriv.
Yeah.
The base at Yavoriv, which was to the west of the city of Lviv,
was called Yavoriv,
which is the westernmost major city in Ukraine. It was roughly, 60 kilometers from the border with Poland, right? The Russians hit it early on, and it was the only time that they have so far used hypersonic weapons in this conflict, or for sure have used them, because there are other possibilities, other targets that they might have hit with hypersonics, but nobody's quite sure. But the point is, at Yavoriv, they hit him with hypersonics. The NATO air defense systems, satellites and all that, didn't even see them coming until they hit.
That's true.
Okay, because that's the point of hypersonic weapons. That when they travel that fast.
I think the NATO, those mercenaries on equipment, they were thinking, okay, we have AVAX, we have all these satellites. Don't worry, we're going to see this. If some missiles are fired and going to that direction, we're going to see it. We're going to do something. I think they panicked, and I don't remember. It was 9th of March or 8th of March when there was some kind of panic in the fucking Pentagon after that shit. And we had that interview with that Pentagon guy who said, holy shit. Yeah, he used that word. Holy shit, everybody inside the Pentagon are panicking right now. They're shitting their pants. He was doing the interview. You cannot see his face, but he was doing some interview with some. I remember watching that. I'm gonna try to find it for tomorrow. And he says everybody's panicking because we couldn't even see those missiles coming in. I think he's talking about that.
7, 8, 9, 10 times faster than the speed of sound. As I understand it, what happens is that the air in front of the missile becomes so compressed that this air compression apparently diffuses radar signatures, and so radar signals rather, and so they don't see the missile. I don't quite understand myself. It's not really important. The important thing is the upshot. That the West didn't see these missiles coming. The Western militaries didn't see it coming. And it just totally destroyed that base. And more properly, it was marking its territory. The Russians were basically saying, don't fuck with us because we will fuck you up good. And, NATO has been doing this very slow incremental process. After 3-4 months, they sent the M777s in May, I believe it was. 3 months into the conflict. And then after that, it was, the HIMARS system. I mean, it's been a slow escalation.
That's true. I have so many chats, so I don't pay attention because I'm streaming so many platforms. I'm just testing it, so I just see what other people are saying. I didn't read it. Sorry. So we have Istvan who says if they would stop giving weapons, the leaders in their bunkers would have to make peace instead of proud principles. They literally sit in the fire with their ordinary people. That's true. I mean, so how can we ordinary people tell them to suck the middle finger and leave us alone? We don't want to die for Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine has a right to defend themselves, but do we all have to die? And not just that. I mean, all that, when you look at how Ukrainians behaving, you have to give us this, you have to give us this, you have to die for us. No, we don't have to die for you. You're not worth it, so we can all die for you. None of us do. Not even my country is worth everybody dying. If I have to choose, if someone has, you have to choose. All Serbians should die, but the rest of the world will live in peace. All 7 billion. Of course I would say, yeah, kill us all. Give the humanity the chance to survive. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And I think we just passed the threshold that we already in World War III, and we just can't get out of this. I think the NATO and the United States would love to get out of this. They just don't know how to get out of this. And this is what scares me. They're going to do stupid things because of that. They're going to say, oh, if we just do this one more time, if we just do oh yes, it's a Russian red line, but fuck, man, if we just do this, if we just give them this, nothing will change the outcome of this war. None. Even fucking Napoleon find out that stuff when he was in Moscow. He was in fucking Moscow, dude, and he lost the fucking war. And all of a sudden, what happened? Russians are in Paris. Hitler, the same fucking thing. He was at the gates of Moscow, 10 kilometers. Oh, I'm winning. Really? You winning against Russians? Really? Yeah, what the Scott Ritter says, yeah, Russians are slow, but fuck, man, when they woke up, and I think people in Russia at the beginning of this Ukraine war just didn't know what to think because their government, Putin and all this, didn't explain them what's really going on. How Russia is in danger because of this. NATO expansions. Look, 27 million died in Russia from Nazism. These people, I mean, Serbia also, many died. And people in Russia don't want something like that in their neighborhood. And they're seeing it. Their own people going through all of that again. I'm not saying all Ukraine is Nazi, of course, that's just stupid. But that significant minority is like everywhere. And because they are prepared to do violence, intimidation, murder, kidnap, all the other majority is scared, and that's why they rule. Remember Germany, Hitler, when he came to power, they only have a little minority. How the hell Hitler came to be? Because Nazis were prepared to do horrible things. And that's when you say little minority, all of a sudden became majority because of the fear. So Russian people in Ukraine fought for 8 years. And I'm not going to say who's right or wrong, but if your army is attacking you, your own citizens, there's something wrong about that, because these are not Russians. This is Ukrainian Russian-speaking population. They're not Russians. They don't have a Russian passport. They have a Ukrainian passport. So all of a sudden, you find out, all 15 million of them after Maidan, that their government doesn't want them. They don't care about them. They're prepared to be burned alive in Odessa, and no one did anything about it. So put yourself in the shoes with the ordinary Russian who watching TV in 2014 on Maidan and seeing in May that 100 people burning in Odessa, seeing all that. Put yourself in his shoes. After that, no one's held responsible. And I was watching some people in studio, Ukrainian studio, with journalists and many people inside. They're watching live video from Odessa, seeing all those people jumping from the windows and people coming up with some kind of metal rod and hitting them, and they're laughing. Other people saying that's a good thing, they're separatists, that's good. And now you put yourself in the shoe with the Russians who watching the same thing. He says, holy shit, I better take my fucking weapon because these people are coming for me tomorrow. And that's how that thing started. That's how the fucking thing started. That's how the Donbass and Lugansk wanted to be independent. And who can blame them? No one.
Of weapon systems, right? And now they're talking about F-16s. Now, they're also talking about tanks. But as I said in a previous video yesterday, I do believe I said, you know, tanks require all kinds of people and equipment that you have to ship all the way across Ukraine, whereas planes, you just need one pilot. And for him, you know, a full tank of gas, for him to fly into Ukraine, send his missiles to whatever targets that they're trying to hit, and fly back to Poland or Romania, right? And so clearly this is kind of like a bait, because these planes are older. That is, they're more vulnerable to modern Russian air defense systems. And so the point, obviously, is to either knock down some F-16s and create the justification for better planes, like the F-15s and eventually the F-35s, right? Or to have the Russians do a similar strike as they did at Yavoriv on Polish or Romanian territory, which would automatically trigger Article 5 of NATO, of the NATO treaty, and bring in NATO in a direct confrontation with Russia. Now, the Russians aren't stupid. They're probably not going to hit the Polish air bases where these F-16s are being staged. They could, whenever they wanted to. I don't think that they're going to do it because it's clearly a political decision. I mean, it really would trigger full-on NATO war with Russia. And the Russians, of course, don't want that. It's not so much that they're afraid of NATO. They want to keep the rest of the world, China, India, the non-aligned nations, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, they want to keep them on side. It's a diplomatic, political issue. It's not a military issue. If it was just military, they'd blow those bases to smithereens, and there wouldn't be anything that
they would have every right to do that. I mean, after international war, if you are a party in the conflict, you have every right to hit them. So thank God for Russia, because they're the only adult in the room. Can you? Okay, let's reverse it. How would the United States behave in the similar situation? I don't even want to. I don't even want you to answer this because you know the answer. I mean, what Russians are actually managing de-escalation. They have to fight on 50 different fronts. Dude, can you imagine how good Russians are? And people say the Russians are bad. Really? They're bad? Think about it. They're fighting the whole West and they are winning. Holy shit. They have to take care of diplomacy with other countries. They have to de-escalate against NATO because clearly the NATO wants to escalate. They have to fight the war in Ukraine. They have to do this. They have to do this. They have to manage this. They have to manage Crimea. They have to manage their fleet. I mean, it's just a shit show. The Russians are doing it actually mind-boggling. If you would know about it, if we would know about it, what goes in, how many people are on the job for this, it will be mind-boggling for you. If you just if they can lay out all on this on the table and says, look what we are doing, look, we have to manage this, just not to go with war with NATO. We don't want to go with war. Maybe we can kick ass NATO. Who knows? But we all know at the end where this thing is going to go. It's going to go to the nuclear weapons. That's the problem. I don't think Russians are having problem hitting Poland or Germany. They don't give a flying fuck. They will hit Poland or Germany anytime they want, and they will win this war. And they will win it.
So clearly what the U.S. NATO is trying to do is dangle these F-16s as a bait. If they knock them out of the sky, escalate with F-15s and F-35s. Probably just make the leap to F-35s and be done with it already. Or if they hit the bases, even better, because it would trigger Article 5. But that option I don't think is going to happen. But knocking those F-16s out of the air, out of the sky, the Russians are definitely going to do that, right? And this notion that the pilots are going to be Ukrainian, come on, man. See, it takes years, an enormous amount of training, very expensive training as I understand it, to train a pilot to fly an F-16. The Ukrainians have never, as far as I know, they've never used F-16s, so they're not going to have trained pilots. So the pilots, who are they going to be? They're going to be NATO. They might have the fiction of being private military contractors wearing Ukrainian uniforms, but they're NATO. They knock off, the Russians knock off a few F-16s rather, and that would lose the pilot, of course, potentially escalate into more deadly aircraft to support the Kiev regime in its final desperate gasps, because we really are coming to the end of this conflict. But most of all, what they want to do is trigger some sort of justification in the West to escalate.
Look at this shit.
In and of themselves, the F-16.
Look at this shit. Because I'm trying Restream. Look at it. Look, they have you cannot get this logo out of here. Look. Restream, it's blue and yellow Ukrainian flag, and you just can't get out of this if you don't pay them. So because I'm just trying this fucking thing, I'm using like OBS and all this, but I just wanted to try. Good luck. Good luck me streaming again from this.
Aren't going to do shit. They're certainly not going to change the battle in Bakhmut. They're not going to change the outcome of this war. It's just a way to increase the pressure on the West to escalate. Because what's happening is that in the West, in Washington and in Brussels, people like Victoria Nuland, Antony Blinken, Wendy Sherman, that whole crowd of warmongering neoliberals, neocons, or whatever you want to call them, and Jens Stoltenberg, the president of NATO in Brussels, they all want to escalate this war. It's the military of the Western nations as well as the United States that do not want to escalate because they know what they're going to get. Because Yavoriv was the lesson. See? Why do you think the Russians hit it so early in the conflict? I do believe, if memory serves, they hit it like March 7th or March 11th. It was early March.
Yeah, I think March 8th.
That's the point, which is barely 2-3 weeks into this conflict. It was the Russians marking their territory, basically telling NATO, don't come into this conflict because we can hit you and we can hurt you, like we did in Yabornev, where 400 of your contractors and quote-unquote volunteers got blown to kingdom come, and $400 million worth of gear went sayonara, baby. Yeah, you see what's going on. See, the American and European militaries know what they're dealing with, and they want no piece of it. It's the political leadership that is desperate to escalate. Why do you think the escalation in weapons has been so long and stretched out? Like I said previously, it was in May that they started sending these howitzers, the M777s. That really didn't make much of a difference. And then a couple of months after that, I think it was June, July, August, if I recall correctly, they sent the HIMARS with a big kerfuffle, but they didn't send the long-range missiles of the HIMARS. It was only the short-range ones, right? And then after that, you know, it's been now they're talking Patriots and tanks. See? It's this very slow escalation in the weaponry. Why do you think that is? What, because they didn't have the gear? No, they had the gear, but they didn't want to give it. The military, the Western militaries didn't want to give it. And it's been the political pressure of the neocons, the warmongers, who have been slowly escalating this, and now we're up to airplanes. Airplanes seem an easy fix, because insofar as the different tanks and armored vehicles are concerned, you know, each of them requires enormous logistics, all kinds of gear and men, trained men, to operate the armored personnel carriers and the fighting vehicles and the tanks, and also maintenance, repair, moving them around. They actually have like a special crane for these things. You know, it's all kinds of complicated. Whereas a plane, this is one guy who hops in his cockpit in Poland, where all the weapons are and the maintenance and everything is hunky-dory. He flies out 500 kilometers or however far he dares because of Russian air defense systems. Let's go of his missiles, and you know, attacks the Russians that way, you know, under the guise of being part of the Ukrainian armed force and the Ukrainian Air Force, which is a fiction, as I explained. Okay, so it's just bait for the Russians. I don't think that the Russians are going to take the bait insofar as hitting the bases, as I mentioned before. I do think that they're going to blow those F-16s out of the sky, and then the issue will become: will that hysterical warmongering clique in the political class of the West have the gumption to escalate to the next level, to the F-35s, to something better, more modern? Because they're going to say, oh yeah, but the F-16 is an old plane, 50 years old, but we got the F-35. It's brand new and it's never been tested in combat, so let's test it in combat. I think that's more or less the direction of travel insofar as escalation by NATO is concerned.
Already. And
in and of themselves, the planes mean nothing. And all this, you know, onanism, because that's what it is. Onanism, look it up. Okay. All this onanism over the F-16 and its ability and the missiles that it can. I've seen all kinds of threads on Twitter telling me that, oh, we could do this, oh, we could do that. You know, it's stupid. It's really dumb. Because they're not going to make a lick of difference. It's just to politically escalate this war and get NATO to fight against the Russians directly. Understand what's going on.
True. Okay. We are getting off this stream. We tested it. We see what we can do. Just like Gonzalo Lira said. Said at the end, know what's going on.
Understand what's going on.
True. And find the truth by yourself. That's it. We're going. Goodbye.